The wind moved across the rocky plain. As Jace walked toward the crash site, his boots kicked up red dust and ash. The sky above was orange and heavy with storm clouds. The mining colony had sent a signal days ago, and he was the only one close enough to answer it. He did not expect much, maybe some broken equipment or frightened workers, but what he found was something else entirely. There was smoke rising from the wreckage, twisted metal and broken machines all around him. The place was silent. Too silent, not even the usual desert animals made a sound. His hand moved to his blaster as he stepped deeper into the wreck. He heard a sound behind one of the bent walls, soft breathing and a whimper. Not human. He pushed aside the debris and saw her, small, shivering and covered in dust. Her eyes were large and bright purple, glowing faintly in the dark. She looked no older than a child, her thin arms wrapped around her knees. Her skin was pale like moonlight and shimmered slightly under the sun. He dropped to one knee and held out a hand. His voice was calm, gentle. He asked her if she was hurt. She looked up with fear in her face, then slowly nodded her head. He saw no blood, but she was shaking all over. She spoke with a soft voice and told him her name. Kali. Her people were part of the mining team. They were not fighters, just builders and techs. The raiders had come from the hills, fast and cruel. They took the adults and left her behind, thinking she was too young and weak to be worth anything. Just frowned at that and gave her some water. She drank it quickly, her hands still trembling. He wrapped his old jacket around her and helped her stand. She was light as a feather, and every step she took seemed to cost her strength. She did not complain, though. She just looked at him with wide eyes. They made camp in a nearby cave. Jace built a small fire and cooked a pack of rations. Kali sat beside him, watching every move he made, like she was studying him. She asked why he came alone. He said because no one else would. She looked down at the fire and said quietly that not many would help her kind either. That night, as the fire crackled low, Kali sat close to Jace. The warmth made her relax, and her fear started to fade. Her voice became more sure, and she asked questions about Earth and humans, and why his kind smiled so much. He laughed and said maybe it was to hide the pain. She tilted her head at that, but did not argue later. When the fire turned to glowing coals, she scooted closer. Her hand touched his arm, and he looked down at her. She was blushing, her pale cheeks glowing pink under the firelight. She bit her lip, then spoke, her voice small but clear. She said, "I am old enough." Human just froze for a moment, unsure what to say. The words hung in the air like smoke. He could see she meant them with all her heart, but he also saw she did not fully understand the world, yet she was trying to be strong, to act brave like an adult, even if she was still learning. He smiled gently and placed his hand over hers. He told her she had a kind heart and great courage, and that one day she would be strong enough to change the stars, but not yet, not today. She looked away, her face still red, but she nodded slowly and whispered that she would wait, she would grow, she would train, and one day come back. He wanted to say more, but the night grew cold and heavy, and sleep pulled them both under. When he woke the next morning, the fire was out, and Kali was gone. Only his jacket remained folded beside him with a small carved stone on top of it, her name etched into its surface. Jace looked out at the horizon, but saw no sign of her, only dust and wind, and the wide silent plain. He picked up the stone and placed it in his pocket, then stood up and walked toward his ship. The mission was over, but something had started, something he could not yet name. He did not know it then, but those 5 words would echo in his mind for years to come. I am old enough, human. And one day they would return to him, not as a whisper by firelight, but as a voice, strong, proud, and full of power. And when that day came, the galaxy would never be the same again. The desert wind was loud again, but this time it was not from the storm. It came from the roar of engines above. As Jace stood near the edge of a ruined outpost, the same red sand stretched before him, but the years had changed him. His hair was shorter, his jacket was newer, his boots heavier with scars, and his eyes held shadows he did not carry before. He had not seen Kali since the day she left. The stone she gave him stayed in his pocket, through every mission, every battle, every dark night in alien bunkers. He did not talk about her, not to the soldiers, not to the crew, not even to himself. But when he looked up at the stars, he sometimes wondered if she was out there training, growing, remembering many things had changed. The galaxy was louder now. Trade routes were no longer safe. Raiders moved in packs. Whole colonies vanished without calls for help, and the peace humans once hoped for had faded into something cold and sharp, like a blade under the skin. Jace took harder jobs, worked deeper missions, places where no one wanted to go. Once he helped a village rebuild after a quake, and an old man gave him a carved token with strange symbols. Jace stared at it for a long time, then asked if anyone else had passed through. The man nodded, said a warrior with glowing eyes left it behind. A moon ago. Jace said nothing, but held the token tighter. In another job He rescued miners from an infected zone. A deadly sickness spread fast, but someone had sealed off the vents before his team even arrived. A survivor said they were saved by a woman with a silver mask and curved blade. She moved like wind and vanished before anyone could ask her name. Jace said little, but his heart moved in his chest in a way he had not felt in years. Rumors grew across the outer zones, stories about a masked fighter who helped the weak without asking for pay. She worked alone, never showed her face, but left behind signs: a piece of folded cloth, a single glowing flower, a line drawn in the sand. Jace began following these signs, each one like a breath from the past. One day his ship received a strange message, coordinates with no sender. The signal was weak, buried under layers of data. Almost like it was not meant to be found, but Jace found it anyway. He changed course and headed straight toward it. His crew thought he was chasing ghosts. He said, "Maybe I am, but I have to seethe." World he landed on was dry, cracked, filled with broken machines and lost satellites. He moved alone across the dust toward a canyon edge, and there he saw it, a symbol carved into stone, a spiral with 3 dots beside it. He had seen it once before, on the stone Cal. Lee left him long ago. His heart beat faster as he stepped into the canyon shadows. The air grew colder, darker, the wind fell silent, each step echoed louder, until it felt like the whole world listened. Then he heard it, a sound not natural, not machine, not beast. It was movement behind him, soft, sure, close. He turned fast, blaster drawn, but stopped mid-breath. The figure before him was tall, wrapped in cloth and armor, the mask covered the face, but the eyes glowed violet, the way he remembered them. The blade in her hand curved like moonlight, her stance ready but calm. She did not speak, and neither did he not. At first, she stepped forward slowly and placed something in his hand, a small charm with the same spiral symbol. Her voice came soft but firm. "Through the mask you kept your promise." Human Eye kept. Minajachi stared at the charm, then back at her. He asked, "Is it really you?" Her answer was to lift her hand to her mask, but she did not take it off, not yet. Instead she turned and walked away, pausing only to say, "Follow me if you still trust me." He did not think twice. He followed her deeper into the canyon, the light behind them fading as a storm built above. But Jace felt no fear, only something old and strong rising again, a feeling he thought was lost with the dust of years gone. They reached a cave hidden by vines and stone. She lit a crystal torch, and the walls came alive with markings, stories etched in glowing lines. Jace saw her journey, told in pictures, battles, training, strange worlds. Her alone, standing against dark things, her watching over broken people, her standing before a fire with a human beside her. He turned to her and asked, "Why now? Why come back?" After all this time, her answer came low and steady, "Because I am ready, and you are in danger. Something is coming, and I cannot fight it." Alona. Jace nodded, once his grip firm around the charm she gave him again. He knew the years between them were gone, burned away by the truth in her voice. She had come back not as the girl he met, but as the warrior she became, and this time she was not leaving without him. Jace stood at the edge of the canyon, staring into the deep shadows that wrapped around the cave entrance. His hand still held the charm Kali had given him again. The weight of it felt heavier now, not because it was large, but because of the years that lived inside it. The wind outside howled, but inside the cave, the silence was thick like waiting breath. Lee walked ahead, her steps silent, her cloak moving like part of the cave itself. She had changed, not just in height or shape, but in the way she moved, like every part of her knew what to do. Her blade sat on her back, smooth and deadly, and the air around her felt charged with something that Jace could not explain. They walked through tunnels, lit by crystals buried in the walls. The glow showed strange symbols, ones Jace had never seen before, but Kali traced them with her fingers, as if reading memories from long ago. She did not speak much, and Jace did not press her, because he felt this was her place, and her time to stopped before a wall that looked solid, but with a single press of her hand, it opened like a breath of air. Behind it was a chamber filled with weapons, tools, scrolls, and maps, all from different races and places. She walked to one of the tables, and placed her blade down gently, then looked at Jace, her mask still hiding her face. She said, "You asked why I came back, and now I will show you." She turned on a screen from the wall, and strange recordings began to play. Voices filled the room, cries, warnings, strange creatures with shifting forms devouring settlements, draining energy from living things. Jace leaned in as he saw entire towns turn to dust under black clouds with glowing red ice. Lee spoke slowly, "These things move in silence. They feed on fear. They destroy from the inside out. We call them the Hollow, and they are growing stronger every cycle. I have stopped a few, but now they are coming here to your space, and they will not stop." Jace asked who else knows this. She shook her head. Not many. The leaders do not believe what they cannot see, and others are too afraid to speak. My people think I left to be wild, but I left to learn. I trained with the silent clans, fought in the dune arenas, learned tech from the moon nomads. I became what I had to become, so I could fight. She turned to him now and said, but I cannot fight this alone. They know your name. Jace, they remember your help from long ago. They fear that you and I together can stand in their way, and that is why. They want to find you. Before I just looked at the screen again, then at her, his voice steady. Then let them come and let them try. Because if we stand together, they will regret ever crawling into this galaxy. She tilted her head, and for the first time he thought he saw her smile under the mask, not with lips, but with her eyes, that glowed soft like old stars before they could speak more. A sharp sound cracked through the cave walls. A high screech followed by rumbling dust fell from the ceiling, and the crystals flickered. Kali moved fast, grabbing her blade and motioning Jace to follow. They rushed through another tunnel that led outside. Just as the sky turned dark, and shapes dropped from it, machines unlike any Jace had seen before landed, with no flame or sound, thin black limbs and sharp edges, glowing red centers like broken suns. Kali ran ahead, blades flashing as she leaped into them. With no fear, her moves were fast, clean, each strike exact. She moved like water, like wind, like memory turned to fire. Jace drew his weapon and joined her. The fight was hard but not hopeless. Together they moved in a rhythm, not learned but remembered from long ago. As if the fire they once shared had never faded, and now burned stronger than ever. One of the machines grabbed Jace, but Kali was there in a blink, cutting through metal and lifting him with one hand. They stood back to back as the last machine fell, Kali breathing hard but steady. Jace looked around and saw strange dust rising from the machines, not smoke, but spores. He reached out, but she stopped him. Do not touch that. It marks you for them. It tells them who lived and who fought. They returned to the cave, and Kali sealed the entrance behind them, her voice low. They know. You are here now. We have little time and much to do. Jace sat down, catching his breath, then looked up at her and said, then let us start now. Tell me everything. She nodded and sat across from him, placing the charm back in his hand. You kept this through all the years. That means something to me, and now you must keep something else. She reached into her cloak and pulled out a small map carved on stone with 3 points glowing faintly. This is where we go next, and if we survive, what waits there? The Hollow will know fear for the first time. Jace held the map and met her eyes. No fear, only fire, because she was back, and this time they would face the darkness together. Asterisk. The map Kali gave him was cold to the touch, and rough like it had been carved by hand, not machine. The symbols on it glowed with faint light, but only when Kali touched them. Jace studied the shapes and lines, but they meant nothing to him, not yet. She said nothing for a while, only watched him with eyes that seemed to hold the weight of many years. The path marked on the map led through deep canyons and hollow valleys, places where no signals reached and no rescue ever came. Jace knew these zones were called the Dark Veins by traders who whispered of ghosts and machines that walked at night. Kali simply called it the Old Bloodland, and said it was where the Hollow first touched her world. They traveled by night, hiding by day. The air was dry, and the sky was always heavy with clouds that never rained. Kali moved with quiet purpose, her blade always ready, her steps never wasted. Sometimes she would pause and listen to the wind, and Jace wondered if she could hear more than just the air. One night, they found an old tower half buried in sand, the stone walls covered in writing so ancient it looked like scars. Kali placed her hand on the wall, and it opened, not with sound or light, but with a slow breath, like something waking after a long sleep. Inside was dark and full of silence, deeper than any cave Jace had known. Kali led him down winding steps that seemed to go beneath the world. The walls glowed as they walked, showing images carved in light and stone, creatures, stars, battles, and a single figure wearing a silver mask, always standing alone but never kneeling. Kali said nothing until they reached a chamber at the end, lit by a single blue flame. Hovering above the floor, she turned to face him, and for the first time reached for her mask. Her hands moved slow, as if unsure. Then she pulled it off, and Jace felt his breath catch, not because she looked strange or alien, but because she looked real. Her face was older now, no longer soft and unsure, but strong, marked with small scars and lines of light that ran across her skin like living threads. Her eyes still glowed, but now with depth, not just shiny. Saw the girl he once knew in the shape of the warrior before him, but also saw the many years between them. The pain, the fire, the fights she had faced alone. She spoke in a soft voice, not shy, not bold, but honest. I told you I would return, and now I have, but not just for you, for all who will fall, if we do nothing. Just stepped closer not to touch, but to look into her eyes, and said, "You kept your word, and now, so will I. Whatever comes next, we face it together." She nodded once, and then turned to the flame. The chamber shifted around them, walls changing, showing new paths. "The map you carry, it leads to the source of the hollow, a place where they sleep feed. Grow. I have been there once, and barely made it out alive. Now we go back." He asked what would happen if they failed, and her answer was simple: "Then the stars will go quiet, one by one, until only silence remains." They left the chamber, and the tower sealed behind them, as if it knew their task was not yet done. Kali wore no mask, now her face open to wind, and sun, and starlight. She did not hide any more. The days that followed were harder. The land grew cruel, and strange machines roamed with no purpose, and the sky turned green at night. Jace kept pace, never falling behind, and Kali never slowed for him. But when he stumbled, she reached for his arm. Without words, when he bled, she wrapped the wound with cloth torn from her own cloak. Did not speak much, but their silence was full, not empty. It held trust, memory, and something else. Not spoken, but felt like a bond, not built by time, but by truth. At last they reached a valley shaped like a claw, and Kali stopped. "This is the place," she said, not with fear, but with calm. "Here is where they were born, and here is where we must end them." Valley was filled with strange stone and black roots that pulsed under the ground, like veins of a sleeping beast. Jace felt something move. Inside his chest, a deep echo that was not his own car. Lee handed him a small crystal, and said, "When it turns red, you must run, not fight. Not stay, just run, and promise me you will live." He looked at her and said, "I will run only if you run with me." And she smiled with tired eyes and replied, "Then we run together, or not at all." They stepped into the valley side by side, weapons ready, hearts steady as the first whisper reached them from below, a sound like hunger and memory twisted into one. The reveal was done. Her face uncovered her truth, spoken, and now only the fight remained. The valley felt wrong from the moment they stepped in, not because of what they saw, but because of what they felt. The silence was not real. It was full of something waiting, something watching. The air pressed down like thick water, and the ground pulsed under their feet like a sleeping beast. Kali kept her blade drawn, eyes scanning every shadow, her body tense but calm like a storm. Just before the first Wingers walked close behind, his hand on his blaster, though he knew bullets might not work against what they would face. The mapstone pulsed in his pocket, glowing brighter with each step, as if guiding them toward the heart of the hollow. They followed the path through twisted roots and cracked stone. The trees here were dead, but still stood tall, as if frozen by fear. Suddenly Kali stopped, her hand raised. Jace froze too, and listened. Then he heard it, a soft clicking sound, like bone tapping metal, followed by a hiss that came from nowhere. And everywhere Kali turned slowly, and pointed to a nearby ridge where black shapes moved in and out of the stone like smoke with claws. They did not walk. They floated, dragging pieces of the world behind them. Kali whispered, "They are scouts. If we kill them, more will come. But if we run, they will follow and call others." Jace nodded and asked, "What now?" Kali did not speak. Instead, she moved like lightning, her blade cutting through the first shadow. With no sound, the thing split in two and vanished into dust, but not before letting out a shriek so loud the ground shook. More of them came from all sides, shapes with no eyes, only mouths that opened wider than heads, full of teeth that clicked like broken glass. Kali fought with skill and fury, her blade flashing with light and strange energy. Each strike burned the creatures away, but more kept coming. Jace fired his blaster into the dark, hitting some, but they did not fall like normal things. They twisted and screamed, and kept coming. He threw a grenade that lit up the sky with fire, but the hollow swarmed through it like it was rain. Kali grabbed his arm and shouted, "Go! Now we must reach the core, or this will never stop." They ran through the valley as more hollow poured from the ground, crawling out of cracks and holes like water from a broken dam. The crystal Kali had given Jace was now glowing red, pulsing fast like a heart in panic. He looked at her, but she kept running, her face focused, her eyes glowing with something more than just light. She was not afraid, she was something more than afraid, something deeper, something full of fire and rage. They reached a wall of rock that pulsed like flesh cut. Lee pressed her hand to it, and the stone peeled open, revealing a tunnel filled with light that moved like water inside the walls. Jace saw faces, not human, not alien, just shapes of fear trapped in the stone. The moment they stepped in, the wall closed behind them, and the hollow screams faded into nothing. They stood in a long hallway that stretched down into the earth. The walls shimmered with strange symbols and energy that made Jace dizzy. Lee walked ahead, faster now, her steps sure. She said, "The core is close, and the truth lies there." Jace asked what truth she meant, but she only said the one that hurt the most. As they moved deeper, the hallway turned into a wide chamber, where a great tree grew from stone. its roots made of wires and bone, its trunk pulsing with dark light, and its branches reaching into the ceiling, where red crystals hung like dead stars. Kali stepped forward, and the tree spoke not with words, but with sound that entered the mind, and filled it with dreams and fear. It said, "Welcome, child of blood and choice, welcome, bringer of balance and fire." Kali fell to one knee and gritted her teeth, as the voice tried to pull her under. Jace stepped forward, and shouted, "Let her go." But the tree laughed, a sound like a broken clock ticking backward and forward. At once Kali stood slowly, her voice strong and clear. "I am not yours, I was never yours. You called me when I was weak, but now I am stronger than ever, and I am not alone." She reached for the glowing stone at her waist, and placed it against the root. The tree screamed, and the chamber shook. The crystals above shattered, and the ground cracked open. Jace grabbed her arm as the floor broke apart, and they fell together into the light below, spinning through air that was not air, falling into a place between places where the truth waited, wrapped in shadow and fire. He held her close as the world bent around them, and her voice echoed through the dark. "I told you I would return now. Watch what I have become." They landed in silence, but it was not soft. It was deep and full of pressure, like they had fallen into the chest of a sleeping god. The space around them was alive, but not with breath. It pulsed and moved with slow waves of light and shadow. The ground was not ground, but a surface that shifted underfoot, like skin stretched over something. Ancient stood first, his body sore and heart pounding. He looked around, but the shapes made no sense. Walls melted into arches that flowed into pools of dark water that reflected things not in the room. Kali rose beside him, her face calm, her eyes glowing brighter than ever. She placed a hand on one of the walls, and the whole space rippled like water touched by wind. "This is the heart," she said, "not of the hollow, but of the thing that made them. They were not born, they were shaped. This place is their maker, their mother, their root. It sleeps still, but not for long, and when it wakes, the stars will die, one by one, not with fire, but with hunger." Jace walked beside her, trying not to look too long at the strange reflections. Each one showed memories, but not his. They flickered with images of other lives, other worlds, each destroyed by the same black shadow, each ending in silence. He reached for his weapon, but Kali stopped him, her voice soft. "Here, weapons do not work, only will does." They moved deeper through the halls that bent like living vines. Symbols crawled across the walls, like insects spelling names in no language. Jace could read Kali, read them out loud, her voice like wind through glass, each name a memory of a warrior who failed, each one a warning to those who followed. Then they found the chamber. It was round and tall, with a pool in the center that glowed with blue fire. Above it hung a crystal, shaped like a heart, but pulsing with red light. Kali stepped forward and removed the charm from Jace's neck. She held it in both hands, then placed it into the pool. The light flared and the chamber shook. "Hey!" Voice rose from the pool, not a whisper, not a roar, but something in between. It called Kali by her full name, a name Jace had never heard, and spoke of her birth, of the mark on her skin, of the choice she once made to walk away instead of serve. "You denied your power," it said. "You fled from purpose and hid behind a human mask." Kali answered, "I did not flee. I waited. I learned. I changed. I chose my path, and I choose again now. I choose to end you." The voice laughed, and the crystal heart above cracked. Lines of black spread across it, and from the shadows creatures began to rise, not like before, not smoke and teeth, but real shapes, tall, wide, strong, with limbs like blades, and eyes that burned like coals. Jay stood ready, but Kali stepped in front of him, her body glowing. Now her arms covered in the same light lines as her face, her blade lifted, and the markings on it came alive. The creatures rushed, and she met them in silence. Each strike from her blade lit the chamber with bursts of white fire. Each move flowed like music, sharp and fast, and Phenalgius fired into the gaps, watching for any that got past her. One did a tall beast with arms like razors. It charged, and he rolled under its swing, blasting it in the chest until it cracked apart. Kali turned just in time to pull him back from another attack, her hand wrapped around his, and their eyes met, and in that look, no words were needed. The battle lasted long, or maybe only a moment. Time had no meaning in the heart below. When the last creature fell, the pool turned black, and the crystal heart above shattered, with a sound like thunder in a dream. The walls began to collapse, the floor cracked, and the chamber screamed like it had a soul. Being torn, Kali grabbed the charm from the pool. Now glowing gold, she pressed it into Jace's hand, and said, "This will guide us out, but you must hold it tight and not let go." He nodded, and they ran through the falling halls, the charm lighting the path as the world behind them turned to dust and shadow. They reached a shaft of light, and jumped without thinking, falling up into a sky that opened above them, stars rushing past like rain made of silver and cold. They landed on stone and grass under a dark sky filled with quiet. The valley was gone, the tower gone, the map gone, but the charm still glowed in his hand. Kali fell to her knees, breathing hard, her body dim now, her glow fading. She looked up at Jace and smiled a tired, soft smile, the kind only warriors give after long battles. "I have one more truth to tell," she said, "but not here, not now. First let me sleep beside you just for a while." He nodded and sat beside her, the wind gentle now, the silence real, not waiting, not hiding, only calm, only earned, only safe for now. Morning came slow and quiet, with a pale sky above them, and soft winds moving over the hills. Jace opened his eyes to see Kali sitting near the edge of a broken stone, watching the horizon. Her blade lay beside her, and the charm still glowed faintly. In her palm she looked peaceful, but her eyes were sharp, still glowing with that soft light that never faded. He sat beside her in silence for a while, listening to the quiet air. No more hollow sounds, no more shadows moving through the wind, only calm, and the faint hum of the charm between them. She turned to him after a long moment, her voice quiet but full. "I used to dream about this," she said, "not the battle, not the danger, but this moment, the peace after, when I could sit beside you and not hide, not run, not pretend, just." Looked at her, then looked down at the ground around them. There were no roots, no black veins, no broken machines. Just dirt, grass, stone, and light. He asked what happens now, and Kali did not answer right away. Instead, she held the charm between her fingers and watched as the light inside faded. "Little by little, this was a gift," she said, "given to me by a dying starkeeper long ago. He said it would burn for as long as I kept hope alive. Now it dims, but not because I have lost hope, but because I no longer need it." She reached into a cloak and took out a second piece of the map. Not a map to a place, but a map to something deeper. It showed a network of stars, a hidden path between systems, a way to reach others. Like her, others who had fought and fallen and disappeared. Kali said the hollow are not gone, not forever, but their heart is broken. Now they will be weaker, slower, easier to stop, but only if we warn the others, only if we stand together. Just nodded slowly and asked if she planned to leave again, and this time she looked at him with no mask, no shield, and said, "Not without you, not again. I was strong enough to fight alone, but now I know that strength means little if there is no one to share it with. I came back to you, not because I had nowhere else to go, but because no place felt right without you." In HFY stood and offered her hand, and Jace took it without a word. They walked across the plain toward the hills where his ship waited. Not the same ship from before. This one was smaller, faster, quieter, built for two. He had kept it ready, not knowing why, not asking himself too many questions, until now as they flew into the sky, the world below faded into clouds and shadowed the stars. Ahead opened like doors waiting to be stepped through. Kali sat beside him watching the stars, not with fear, but with something brighter. He asked if she was still tired, and she said, "Always, but I can rest while we fly, and when we land I will be ready again." They reached the first station 3 days later. It floated above a gas giant wrapped in storms and lightning inside the station. The leaders were silent at first, not trusting her, not believing her words, until she showed them the charm, the broken map and the scar left on her arm by the hollow. Only then did they listen, only then did they send out the call. More came warriors, pilots, healers, thinkers, all who had seen the shadows and lived. Kali stood among them, with Jace beside her, not above, not behind, but beside. Always they spoke of what had happened, of what still waited, of what they would need to do. Together, a new map was drawn, not in stone, but in stars, a new path born from what she had seen, what she had felt, and what they had survived. One night, as they watched a comet pass near the edge of a station ring, Kali leaned close and asked Jace if he remembered the fire all those years ago, and the words she had said. He smiled and said, "I remember every word, and every pause and every moment of silence after you said them." She looked down, then looked back up, her cheeks warm and her voice soft, and she said, "I did not understand everything back then, but I knew one thing. I chose you then, and I choose you now. Not because I need you, but because I want to." They stayed there, under the stars, hands clasped, nothing between them, no secrets, no walls, no masks. And when the next signal came, when the hollow stirred again, in a distant system, they did not hesitate. They rose together, stepped onto the new path together, and faced the future, not with fear, but with fire. And somewhere deep in the void, where the last whispers of the hollow crawled through empty space, something paused, something turned, and something remembered the one who came back stronger and the human who stood with her. Without fear, without question, and without ever letting go.